Begin today at the Mishnah at the bottom of Daf Kuf Yud Zayin Amud Beis. Zok Heilige Mishnah V'chein Beis Sabat. Similar halacha to what was mentioned before in the Mishnah there will be in a case where you have an olive press. Shu bonui b'sela. This olive press is basically in a cave. It's sort of carved out, built in a big rock in a mountain. And v'gina achas al gabov. And there's a garden that's on top of this olive press, on top of the roof of this olive press. There's earth over there, and there's a garden there. So Rashi says what we're talking about over here is two brothers that inherited from their father this property, and one is taking the olive press, and the other one is taking the garden that's on the top. What happened? V'nifchas. The roof of the olive press got ruined, and now it was like sort of a dome on top that he's able to put earth there and plant there, but it got ruined. So now he doesn't get his portion. So harei balagine yored v'zerei lamata. So the one that owns the garden on the top can go down and come inside the olive press and say, make space for me to plant my garden over here, because I don't have space to plant on the top. Until the owner of the olive press will fix it up for him and give him the space to build a dome that he's able to put earth there and plant over there. So this is similar to what we learned before. In the Mishnah, it said in the case where you have a bayis and an aliyah, a house and a second floor, and the floor of the top apartment gets ruined, and the one at the bottom, over there was actually talking about a renter. And the landlord has to fix his floor, and until he fixes his floor, he can come downstairs and say, I'm living with you in your house. Hakaisol v'ha'ilon shenaflu. Another halacha. Person that has a wall of his property or a tree in his property that fell. There's enough of should happen. They fell into the public domain. Ve'ziku, and they damaged. Patim el he's patim to pay because this is an inus. He didn't know that the wall is going to fall or the tree is going to fall. There was no signs for this, and it just fell suddenly. So whether it was mazik someone on its way down, or whether it was mazik someone after it was lying there, but he didn't have a chance to clean it up, so it's still an inus, he's going to be patim to pay. If he was given a time that he should cut down the tree by that time, in other words, they saw that this tree is already weak, so he was given a time to cut it down, or to demolish the wall. So now, if it fell within that time period, so it's something that he also didn't expect because it's before the time he was supposed to cut it down, potter, still going to be potter. But after that time when he was given, now chayiv. If it fell, he's going to be chayiv. Another halacha, misha yakaisloi samach laginas chavera. A person has a wall that's between his property and his friend's property, and his friend has a garden, and he built the wall. We're going to see about the halachas of a wall actually in the beginning of Masechta Bava Basra. Over here the Mishnah talks about a garden, because usually when you have two chatzeros, if you have two courtyards, usually the wall that's built between them is built partnership between them. But by a garden, not necessarily you have to build it as a partnership. So one of them built a wall alone. And then what happened? V'nafa. Your wall fell into your friend's garden. V'amaloi, and your friend tells you, Panea v'necha. Clear out your stones from your wall, from my garden. Amaloi, so the owner of the wall is not interested in clearing it out, and he doesn't want to do the work, he doesn't want the stones anymore. So he says to him, Higiyucha, they arrive to you, it's yours, you can keep it. Clear it out and keep the stones for yourself. Now, Ein Shaimeloi, we don't listen to him. If this person, the owner of the garden, is not interested in acquiring it, you can't force him to acquire it. He doesn't want this gift, he doesn't want to have it. But what happens though if Mishakibul after the owner of the garden says, okay, no, you want me to keep it, it's mine, I accept it, I'm going to take it. Then Amaloi, now the owner of the wall comes back to him and changes his mind and says, here, I'm going to pay you for the expenses that you had to hire people or you worked to clear out these stones. And I want to take it back. I want to take back my stones. So then, it's too late. We're not going to listen to him because you already told him that he could acquire it. Then he says, yes, I'm acquiring it. I'm taking it for myself. Now, he doesn't have to give it back to you. Similar halacha, you hire a worker to do work for you with straw or stubble. And now the worker comes and says, after the job is done, pay me my wages. And the employer tells him, take from the straw itself that you did work with, take that for yourself and keep it as your pay. We don't listen to the employer to do this. And Rashi here says that the reason is because even though usually the klal is shove kesef kesef, whenever you owe someone money, you don't have to give him cash. You can give him any other valuables in the place of cash. So over here, why can't he pay him with this straw? So Rashi says because over here it says in the Torah bal tolin scharoi that you're not allowed to pay a person delay payment, and that means that you have to pay him what it is you made up to pay him. You made up you're going to give him cash, if that was what the condition was, so you can't pay him this double. That's what Rashi says. Other Rishonim say that the whole concept of Shavah Kesef Kekesef doesn't apply here in the first place, because by a worker you have to pay. That's maybe by a loan or maybe by damages. In other cases where you're obligated to pay, you say Shavah Kesef Kekesef, but not here. When you hire a worker, you have to pay him cash for this. Now, if the worker accepted it and he said that and now afterwards he comes and says, I want to take back what you took, that he accepted to take the straw for himself as payment. Now he wants to come and take it back. We're not going to listen to him to take it back. After the worker accepted it and took it for himself, he gets too late. He can't. He's kind of ready. It's his. Okay, so the Gemara starts with the first halacha of the Mishnah regarding the olive press with the roof of the olive press that has a garden on it. So nifchasa, right? The Mishnah said that what happened was that the roof of this olive press got damaged and you can't plant there anymore. So then the one that had the garden in the top could say to the one in the olive press, I'm coming down to plant downstairs with you. So now what does this mean? Nifchasa, Rav says Beruba. The majority of the roof got ruined and you can't plant in the majority of this garden. Shmuel says Barba, that this is even just 4 tvachim. If there's an area of 4 tvachim that you can't plant there, you can plant that area downstairs inside the olive press. Rav Beruba. So Rav says that it's only if the majority of it got ruined. Avo Ba'arba, but if it's just 4 tvachim, so then I say Adam Zeireya, it's a person can plant Chetzi Lamata, a little bit down inside, and Chetzi Lamayla, and some of it upstairs. So if it's just 4, he can't say that I'm moving my entire garden downstairs. Shmuel says that no, when it says here that he comes to tells the one that has the olive press, I'm going to move my entire garden downstairs, even if just 4 tvachim got ruined. You can't expect a person to have half of his garden on the top and half of his garden inside. So even if just 4 tvachim got ruined, he can come down and plant it all inside. Okay, so now the Gemara explains. Now, if you remember, this is basically exact same machlokes here between Rav and Shmuel we had before regarding the case of the Bayis Valiyah. When there was a second floor and the floor got ruined, you can tell him, I'm coming and living downstairs with you. So over there, the same machlokes between Rav and Shmuel, whether this is only if the majority of the floor got ruined, or even if only 4 tvachim of it got ruined. So the Gemara here now explains why is this machlokes being taught twice. It was necessary to say that Rav and Shmuel argue in both of these cases. If the machlokes would be brought regarding a person's dwelling on the second floor, I would say maybe it's only there that Shmuel said that even if just 4 tvachim got ruined, you can move completely downstairs. Because it's not normal for a person to have to live half here and half there. If you can't put his kalim, his furniture in one place in his apartment, and he's going to have to move some of his kalim downstairs, so then it's logical that he has the right to say that I'm going to live completely downstairs. But when it comes to planting a garden, it is a normal thing that a person has a garden. Some of the garden is in one location, some is in another location. So over here, I would say he agrees to Rav that if only 4 tvachim got ruined, you can't say that you're moving your entire garden downstairs. So that's why I has to say that Shmuel held his opinion even over here, that even if just 4 tvachim got ruined, he can say he's moving it all downstairs. And on the other hand, if it would only say the machlokes here, in our case with the garden, I would say bahach kama Rav. Only regarding the garden did Rav say his opinion that you can't move it all downstairs if only 4 tvachim got ruined. But earlier, regarding a house, a second floor, I would say he agrees to Shmuel that it's not reasonable for a person to have to live in 2 different locations. So therefore, Tzriche, it mentions both the machlokes of Rav and Shmuel regarding the case of the house and the second floor, and regarding the garden on top of this olive press. Going to the next halach of the Mishnah, speaking about a wall or a tree, and the Mishnah said that you give the person time to cut it down. When we see it's weak and it's going to fall, so we give him time. Nasna leizman. So if we gave him time, so it's like the Gemara of a how much time do we give him? If a kamazman bezin, that is how much time does bezin give him? You give a person 30 days time to demolish his wall or to cut down the tree that's in a risk of falling. Then the Mishnah said, what happens in a case where a person's wall fell into his friend's garden? So the Mishnah they said that if the Bala Kaisel says to the Bala Gina, keep the stones for yourself, we don't listen to him. But then the Mishnah said, what's if the Baal Hagina says, yeah, okay, I'm taking it for myself. I'm going to keep it. And now you come and after he clears it out for himself, and you say, give it back to me, I want it back, it's too late. He already took it for himself. So now the Gemara explains what you see here from this Mishnah. It says in the second part of this case that after the Baal Hagina cleared it out and wants to keep it now for himself, and now the owner of the wall comes and says, hey, look, I'll pay you the expenses of clearing it out, and I want it back. So Meklal, what do we see here from the Mishnah? It's understood that what are we talking about? The panino, that he already cleared it out, askino. That's what we're talking about. So if so, it could be medayik from our Mishnah. Taime de panino. The reason why it's too late for you to get these stones back and the Baal Hagina acquired it is because he cleared it out for himself. Haloi panino, if he wouldn't have cleared it out yet for himself, loi, he wouldn't acquire it. And it seems that, and then if the Baal Hagina would come and say, give it back to me, you would be able to get it back. But the question is, why should you be able to get it back? You should be able to acquire it just by the fact that it's being left in your field or in your garden. The owner of the kaisel said, keep it, you can be kainit. So as long as you left it there, you should be able to be kainit even without clearing it out. Why? Because the courtyard of a person, you acquire something in your courtyard even without your awareness. The very fact that it's there, so you're going to be kainit there. So just it being in your courtyard, and the owner of the kaisel said, keep it. So you should be kainit without doing any action of clearing it out. And says the Gemara, no, it's over here that doesn't apply. Because that's if someone is selling you something, he's giving it to you, and he's intending actually to give it to you. So then, person's giving you something, and he places it into your courtyard. You'll acquire it. Not against your will, but if you want, you'll acquire it. But over here though, over here, when the owner of the kaisel says, keep it, he doesn't really want to sell it to him. He doesn't want him to acquire it. It's just that he's trying to avoid doing the work to clear it out. But his intention is to get it back. So in such a case, just the fact that it's there in this person's garden or field, he's not going to be kained automatically. If he does an action and goes and takes it and clears it out, then it's clear that the owner sees. The owner sees that this guy's actually going and taking it, and he allows you to take it. So then I say that now he's giving up on it. Now he wants you to be kained. But until that, we say that he's just trying to avoid doing the work, and he still wants it back. Then the Mishnah said another case, which is basically the same kind of halacha. When a person was hired to do work with straw, and now you don't want to pay him, so you tell him, take the straw as your pay. So the Mishnah says you can't do that, you have to pay him money. But if he decided already to take the straw for himself as pay, and now you want back the straw, it's too late. Once he cleared it out for himself, it's his, and you can't get it back. So the Gemara wants to understand, why does the Mishnah have to say the halacha regarding a kaisel that fell into a person's garden, and here regarding the pay of a person that did work for you with this straw? Says the Gemara, the Mishnah had to say both cases. If the Mishnah would say the first case regarding the wall in the person's garden, so then I would say the Mishnah says that if the owner of the wall says to the owner of the garden, it's yours, you got it, you can keep it. So in such a case, we don't listen to him. And the reason is, this is not someone that you hired and you owe him money. You just want to give him a gift. You're giving him a gift, these stones, and so the person doesn't have to accept his gift by force. But maybe in the second case, where it's talking about someone that you hired and you owe him money for the work he did for you, so maybe over here I would say that if he says, I'm not paying you cash, this is what I'm offering to pay you, the actual straw that you worked with, maybe we should listen to him. Why? Because the Amri Yinchi, people say, from the one that owes you money, take anything that he'll offer to pay you. Take even bran, something that's very cheap. Get payment from him, because you don't know when he's going to pay you. So if he's offering to pay you anything, take it from him. So maybe there in this case, the second case of the Mishnah, we're talking about a worker. You owe him money. So maybe over here, when he says, this is the straw that I'm paying you, we should say that he should take it. And that's reasonable that he should accept it. On the other hand, if the Mishnah would only say the case of the second case with the worker, then I would say, so here there's a second part of the story. when the person was already zeiche in it, the person already took it. So maybe I would say, hacha, in the case of the worker, that once the worker decides to accept the straw as payment, then I say that if his employer comes and says, oh, I want it back, I'll pay you cash, it's too late, you don't listen to him, because you owed him this money, and he took it already as a pay, so he took it as a pay, it's totally his for that reason. You can't take it back now. But in the ratio of the Mishnah, the last lay agra gabe, this owner of the garden, you didn't owe him anything. So in such a case, maybe over here, even after you said keep it and he took it, but we could say that you weren't really serious, and even after he actually took it, maybe you should be able to take it back. Doesn't the balagina that took it doesn't have rights over it? Tzriche, therefore it has to say that even in that case, once he took it, he was kainet, as mentioned before, he cleared it out, and you stood there and you were quiet, you allowed him to clear it out. It's a raya that you agreed, you wanted him to be kainet with the chotzer, and therefore it's going to be his. Ein shaymaloi. Going now to this halacha itself, what did the Mishnah say? That when you have a person that's doing work for you, and you wanted to get paid with this straw, and he took it, and he got paid with the straw, and now afterwards you want to take it back from him, it's too late. He got paid with the straw. We don't listen to you. It's his. Frag the Gemara, but Vatanya in a Braisa we learn Shaiman Lai that if you want to take back that straw from him, even after the worker took it as pay, we do listen to you. So the Gemara answers, Amarav Nachman Loi Kasher. There's no contradiction here. Kan Bishaloi. If it's a worker that's doing work for you in your property, so you have an obligation to pay him. So you have an obligation to pay him, and now you paid him this straw. He accepted the straw as payment, so it's his. You can't take it back from him. Here, though, it's talking about a case where he's doing work for you not in your property. He's doing work in someone else's property. You don't even have an obligation to pay him at all. So if you don't have an obligation to pay him, so then you can tell him, I don't owe you anything. This straw that you took, I don't owe this to you as pay. I don't have to give you anything b'chlal. So Taisus here actually says that according to this pshat, so it's not only that you don't even have to pay him b'chlal. It sounds like over here that Shaiman Loi. This is actually going back to. Sorry, let me explain this again. This is going back to Shaiman Loi is going back to the first part of the story. That's really what it's going on. Okay, what was the first part of the story? Where he's telling him, I'm not going to pay you cash, but I'm paying you this straw instead of cash. Take the straw. Okay, so in our Mishnah it says, you can't offer him that he should take the straw instead of cash. In the Braisa it said, if you're offering and telling him, here, take the straw instead of the payment of cash, so we listen to him. Okay, so that really was what the stira was, again, on the first part of the story. And on that, the Gemara answers that if it's b'shaloi, if he's working in your property, so then you have to pay him properly. You have to pay him, so you can't offer him not to take the straw as payment. As I explained before in the Mishnah, it actually explains why. And the person is, you showed him your friend's property to work in, and here the Gemara right now is thinking, if you show somebody to work in your friend's property, you have no obligation to pay him at all. So Taisa says, really over here, when the Braisa says, Shaiman Loi, the reason why you can say take the straw is because you don't even have to pay him at all. So if you're telling him take the straw that you were working with, let him go and take it. Because you're not mechuyev to pay him at all. But the Gemara asks on this, is that really the case that you're not mechuyev to pay a person that you show him to do work in your friend's property? So, Malay Rabba or Malay Rav Nachman, Bishaloi, if a person is doing work for you, my timer, why can't you just tell him to take the straw? You have to pay him. Because the Amr Agra Allah, the obligation to pay me for my work is upon you. If so, Bishal Chavere Nami, if you show a worker to go do a job in your friend's property, so Nami is Chari Allah. Who's obligated not to pay him? You're obligated to pay him in the same way. The Tanya, as we learned in the Braisa, we had this before already a few times. You hire a worker to do work in your own property. But then, that's what you tell him. You're going to work for me. And then you show him your friend's property to do work there. You, the employer, has to go and pay him 100%. It's your obligation. And then, then whatever benefit the owner of the property had, you'll go and get reimbursed from him. But it's your obligation to pay him fully. So over here, this worker did work for you with this straw. It doesn't make a difference if he did it in your property or in someone else's property. It's your obligation to pay him. So if you can't tell him now, take for the pay this straw, shouldn't make any difference whether it's in your property or your friend's property. Hello, Rav Nachman. So Rav Nachman says, to answer this contradiction, we have to say as follows. Loi kashet. It's not a question. Kan b'shaloi. You hired a worker to work for you in your property, so then you're obligated to pay him. You can't give him the straw. Kam b'shel hefker. Here the case is that the worker that you hired him to do a job with hefker, and if it's a place of hefker, so Rashi explains that this is Rav Nachman, and Rav Nachman's opinion is that when someone is doing a job for you in hefker, so that hefker things that he's doing the job in doesn't belong to you at all. This is going back to something that we learned in the beginning of the Masechta. According to one opinion, if you hire someone to go and do a job for you in hefker, and he picks up that thing and does the work for you, because he picked it up for you, so then the employer, which told him to go and do this job for hefker, is kainet. This is the halacha of Bava Metzia. If I tell someone, go pick up that Metzia for me, sent him as a shliach to pick it up for you, so then the one that sent him is going to be kainet. So if you hire a worker to go do a job for you in something of hefker, the employer is actually kainet this, so now he's doing a job for you in something that actually belongs to you, so you have to pay him fully for it. But over here, though, this is Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman earlier in the Masechta held that when you send someone to pick up a Metzia for you, he's not going to be kainet for you. He's going to be kainet for himself. So over here, the worker is doing this job with hefker. It's not yours, b'chlal. It's hefker. It's totally ownerless. You don't have to pay him for this job that he's doing in hefker. That's why it says if you tell him take the straw, he can take it and keep it for himself. But the Gemara asks on this. Rav asks Rav Nachman about this. This whole halacha of a person doing this work and you're not kind of this from hefker does not apply in this case. Because here we're not talking about you sending someone to pick up a Metzia for you. Here we're talking about a worker that you hired. That's a different story. And he brings a brayso. The brayso says Metzias poyol la'atzmai. A worker that you hired and is doing work for you. So if on that day that he's doing work for you, he finds something, he keeps that Metzia for himself. Now when is that? If you hired him for a specific job, you should weed my property today, or to dig in the property. So you hired him for a specific job, so then if he finds a Metzia, that's not part of the job description, so then whatever he finds belongs to him. No. He found a Metzia in a place which is not, he can be in a place of hefker. If you hire a worker and you say to him, you don't give him a specific description for your job. You're hired for me to work, to do, whatever you do today is mine. All your work is for me today. Then so whatever he picks up, whatever he finds, is going to belong to the balabas. Why is that? Because a poil is not stam any person. A poil, his hand becomes like your hand. He's an extension of you. You hired him. Whatever he does goes to you. And so if that's the case over here, when you hire this worker and you don't give him a description of what his work is, if you're hiring a worker to do a certain job in something and you gave him a description, that your job is to do work here with this hefker grain. So then for sure, he's an extension of you, and the work that he's doing with this hefker things here will be kind of for the employer. So it'll be your obligation not to pay him for the work that he's doing. So Rav Nachman says, we're talking about hefker, but loy kasha. There's no question here whether you have to pay him properly or not for what he did. And kan bagba. In our Mishnah, even if the worker you hired is doing it with hefker, but the hefker job that he's doing is, he has to pick up these items. And therefore, when he picks it up, who's the one that acquires it? His employer. The poil is an extension of the yad poil is kiyad balabayis, and therefore, when he does that work for you, now this is yours, and you have to pay him for the work that he's doing. And kam babote, the brayso that we quoted that says that shaymalo, you don't have to pay him properly. The reason is because he's doing work for you in hefker, and the work that he's doing for you does not consist of picking up these items that he's doing for you. There was no proper kinyan that ever happened. Let's say you hire this person, you see something, and you hire someone, here, stand there and guard this for me. He never picked it up for you. Or Rashi gives another example. He's doing a work for you for hefker, which just consists of pushing something down from one place to another place. You're pushing it down, let's say, from a rooftop to the ground. He never picked it up. There was never a kinyan that was made here. So if there was no kinyan made, it's all something which is being done with hefker. So then you don't have to pay him for this.
Can the employee take it?
Huh? No.
Can the employee take it for himself?
No. It's hefker. It belongs to him. No, actually, no one was kainet yet. It's abata. So no one was kainet yet. So whoever's gonna then later do a ma'aseh kenya will be kainet. Yeah, okay. But since the job that he did though was not, he was not kainet yet, so therefore you don't have to pay him for the job that was done in hefker. Omar Rabbe, so Rabbe says, habata behefker. This concept we're saying here that when there's hefker and there's someone that's just looking at something, and in the job that he's doing. Like I mentioned, whether he's guarding it or whether he's just pushing it around, but he never picked it up. There's no actual Maisa Kinyan, which is Hagbah, to lift it up. So this halacha that by Hefka Habata does not work, Tanoi. It's actually a machlokes Tanoim. According to some Tanoim, you will be kaina even with Hefka, as we'll see here. Because we learned in the Mishnah regarding Shemitah. So what this is talking about is when they had to bring in the year of Shemitah the carbon of the Omer, which is on the second day of Pesach. They have to have barley for the carbon Omer, or on Shavuos when you have to have the carbon Mincha also, which is from the Shtei Alechem, from wheat. So they have to have this for the Beis HaMikdash, but it's Shemitah, so you can't plant it and you can't have it prepared. So what do you have? You have Svichim, you have what grew on its own. So now, Shoimrei Svichei Shvius, the ones, you have to have guards that are going to be there to guard these Svichim of Shvius, that nobody should come and take it, to keep it for the carbon Omer or for the Shtei Alechem. So these people that are doing this job, Noitlin Schoran Mitrumas Alishka, they have to be paid from the fund of the Trumas Alishka, which is the Machzas HaShekel, where they have all the money, the Trumas Alishka. They have to be paid from the fund of the Tzibur in order for them to guard this, the Tvua, whether the wheat or the barley, for the carbon. That's what the Tanna Kama says. It must be dafka, they must be paid from the fund of Trumas Alishka. Rabbi Yosi says, no, they don't have to be paid from the fund of the Tzibur, from the public, from Trumas Alishka. Haraitze misnadevu, whoever wants could donate from his time and v'shay mechinam, and he can guard it for free. Amrullah, so the Chachamim said to Rabbi Yosi, Ata oimekain, this is what you say, that you can have someone that just donates from his time to guard these what's growing here for free. If so, ein boim mishal tzibur. Then now what's growing here, you're going to be using this for the carbon omer or shtei alechem. It's not going to be coming from the tzibur. Since it's a person that's guarding this and donating from his own time privately to do this, so then it's considered to be something that's his, not from the tzibur. So now, what are they arguing about? My love, don't you think that the argument here is based here on this point? They're just guarding. This is something, the svichim that grow in Shemitah are hefker. And they're just standing and guarding and looking at it. Habata. That's basically what the case of here is. They're just standing and looking at it. So don't you think the argument here is as follows? The Tanna Kama says, Bahabata behefka kani. That if they are standing and guarding there for free, and they're not hired, they're not being paid by the fund of the public, of Hektish. And so they're just standing there and looking at it, but by standing and looking, kani, they already acquire it for themselves. And now in. So therefore the Tanna Kama says, if you're going to hire them, you pay them for this. So then you could say that they're not doing this for themselves. They're hired by the fund of the Yidden, of Hektish, for everybody. So it doesn't belong to them. But if they're not going to be paid by Hektish and they're just standing there themselves and they're donating their own time to do this, so then they're going to acquire it for themselves. That's why the Tanna Kama says you can't allow them to just donate from their own time, because then the carbon, the mincha, oimer, or shtei is going to be brought from themselves. It's not coming from the tzibur. On the other hand, Rabbi Yosi says, Habata behefker loy kani. Just the fact that they're standing and they're guarding it for free, they're not acquiring it for themselves. And then v'chiazli tzibur u'maisi. So when the tzibur goes and now brings this carbon, hashtu the kazachi bay. It's only when they lift it up and the tzibur takes it. When it comes time to cut the wheat or cut the barley, and now the tzibur takes it and they're zeichen it for themselves, that's when they're zeichen it. So there's no issue that they're standing there and guarding it. They're not acquiring it for themselves when they're guarding it. Now, what was the question that the Tanna Kama was asking on Rabbi Yosi when the Tanna Kama says, you say that they can stand there and guard for free? What was the question they were asking? They were asking Rabbi Yosi as follows. Midvarecha, based on what you say that you should do, that they could stand there and be a sheimechinam, even when they're not hired by the tzibur. Lidvareinu, but according to our opinion, according to our understanding of the halacha of habata by hefker, since habata by hefker is going to be kained, just them standing there, they already acquired it for themselves, so now it's not going to come from the tzibur. That's the pshat and the brayse. So we see that they were arguing about this shaila, whether habata by hefker is kained or not. So Rava says, not necessarily is this explanation of the argument. The kula alme, really we can say that everybody holds habata be'efka kani. The fact that you stand there and you're looking and seeing what's growing, you are kind of this. Everybody agrees to this. And bahacha, what's the argument here? Something else. They were kainet, but now after they're kainet, they give it over. They give it over to the tzibur to bring as a carbon. So that's not a problem. The fact that they stand there as a shem chinam and they're kainet themselves. Afterwards, they're not keeping it for themselves. But here though, the argument is chayshinon. Are we concerned? Shema leyimsrim yafi yafe. Maybe they won't give it over to the tzibur wholeheartedly. And maybe since they were kind of for themselves, they want that it should be, let it be our private carbon. And if they're not giving it over to the tzibur properly, then it's got a problem. That's what the argument here is. The Rabbanan Sabri Yavina Leyagre, Rabbanan says you have to hire them and pay them for it, because if you're not going to, they're guarding it themselves and they're acquiring it. And when we're not going to rely on the fact that they're going to give it over to the tzibur, they may not give it wholeheartedly. Rabbi Yosi says, we're not concerned that they're not going to give it over wholeheartedly. They're acquiring it for themselves, and then they're going to deliver it and bring it and give it over to the tzibur 100%. Now again, the Gemara explains the question that the Tanakama, the Chachamim asked on Rabbi Yosi, or Omai Ato Omer. They were asking, you say that they could be a Shaymeh Chinam? What was the question they were asking? Hachi Kamri. This is what the Chachamim were asking, Midvarecha, according to your opinion that says that they could just stand there as a Shem Chinam, the Dvarenu, according to our svara, according to our understanding, the Chashinon, Shem Allah, Yimsrim, Yafa Yafa, that we're concerned that they're not going to give it over properly, wholeheartedly to the Tzibur, since they already acquired it, now it's not going to be coming from the Tzibur. That's the second shot we can say here. A third pshat the Gemara says, Ikadamri, another version of this is Rav Alma, that Rav said, the Kula Alma, they both agree, Habate behefker loikani, that by hefker, when you just stand and are looking at something, you're not going to be kind with this. So over here, really, these shaimrim that I hear is a shaim chinam, and they're just guarding this, the tvuah, they're not kind of this at all. Loikani. So now what's the issue? So why shouldn't they be allowed to do this, donate from their time as a Shem Chinam? They're not going to acquire it, so it's going to be a carbon tzibur. There's a whole different problem here. So the Gemara what they're arguing is, are we concerned that there might be strong-armed people that are going to come and say, hey, this is Hefka, this is Shemitah, allow us to take it for ourselves? So what's the solution to this? Do we have to hire them and pay them from the tzibur, that it should be clear, that everybody should know that they're being hired and this is being kept for hektish, for the carbon, and people will stay away? So the Tanakama Savri, Tanakama hold Savar, the Tekinu Rabbanon, Lemesav Le Arbezuzi, Chamim Minsatura, that they should be paid 4 zuz, and they're being paid from the funds of the Lishka from Hektish. So the strong-armed people that look to take from things that can grab from, they should hear about this and they'll hear that these are not just people that are standing there on their own. They were hired by the Hektish to stand there, and they'll separate. They won't grab anything. Rav Yosi says, Loi tekinu. No, Chachamim did not institute this. They don't have to be paid. We're not concerned that anybody will come and grab from this. Now, the Gemara explains, according to this pshat, what was the question that Tanakama was asking Rav Yosi when the Tanakama says, you say that they can be there Shem Chinam? This is what they were saying to Rabbi Yosi. Midvarecha, according to what you're suggesting, that they could stand there just as a Shem Chinam, Lidvarenu, according to our svare, Aim Ba Mishal Tzibur. It's going to come out that this is not coming, this carbon is not coming from the Tzibur. Why not? So Rashi explains, because they deserve to be paid for zuz, as we just said. And if they're not being paid this 4 zuz, so then they could say that, that portion that we weren't paid, we were taking the payment from the actual tvu itself that we guarded here, and that belongs to us because we weren't paid. We should have been paid. Chachamim instituted to be paid, and we didn't get paid. So therefore it comes out that there's a certain percent of this tvu that's now being used for the carbon that they claim belongs to them. So therefore, Chachamim were asking Rabbi Yosi, according to what we say is supposed to be done, it comes out that not the whole thing is going to be Mishal Tzibur. When he came from Eretz Yisrael, he said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that this is the pshat here in this Mishnah. They're arguing whether we allow them to be a Shem Chinam or they should be paid, in order that it should be clear to Bal Yisrael, to strong-armed people, that they shouldn't come to grab this because it belongs all to Hektish. A person that's taking his fertilizer out into the Rishus Harabim, so he wants to take his fertilizer out of his property, and usually it could be left there, people tread over it, and then this fertilizer becomes something that could be used then in a field. So Hamaitzi, the one that takes it out, the Rishus Harabim takes it out, he's allowed to take it out, but Mazaval, the one that's going to use it for fertilizer has to come immediately and collect it. You're not allowed to leave it there in the Rishus Harabim at all, for any time period. Another thing also under Rishus Harabim, Ein Shoyrin Tit B'Rishus Harabim. If you're soaking clay and it takes time, usually until it develops, and you leave it there for a while, you can't do this in a place where people are going, B'Rishus Harabim. And also, Ve'en Levnim Leveinim, you can't make bricks and form the bricks in the Rishus Harabim. Aval Goivlin Tit B'Rishus Harabim. You are allowed to make the cement in the Rishus Harabim that you're going to use to build, because that's something that you do quickly and it doesn't take time. You don't have to leave it there, and that's something that you can make it and right away use it to build with it. Avaloi Leveinim, but not bricks. The bricks is something that takes time. That's something that you can't make the bricks or in any way to work with the bricks in the Rishus Harabim. A person that's building, and he's building by the Rishus Harabim, and he has his building materials over there. So so you have someone that's delivering for you the materials. He brings the bricks or the stones that you're going to build with. You have to have the builder there. It should be available immediately to take the materials and build with it right away. You can't just put it down there and store it in the street, and then 5 days later someone comes and starts building. You have to have right away available the one that comes to build to be able to build. Now, if you had your things there that you put down, you had your bricks that you put down for the building material, and someone got damaged with this, you're gonna have to pay for the damages that happened. That was you left your bricks there in the Rishus Harabim. However, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel argues and he says, if you're building, you can bring your materials and have it there in advance for 30 days, and then the one that builds comes and uses it, but for 30 days you're allowed to keep it there. And as Gemara is going to say, according to Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, if someone gets damaged by this, you're going to be potter. Shall we say what it says here in our Mishnah? Does not follow what Rabbi Yehuda said. Why? The Tanya, the Brayso we learned. Rabbi Yehuda said, B'shas, I saw zvolim in the time when it's the season when people take out the manure, the fertilizer into the street. You're allowed to take out the manure into the Rishus Harabim. You're allowed to let it pile up over there for 30 days. The people and the animals tread upon it, and then it turns it into proper fertilizer. And the reason you're allowed to take this out is this was one of the conditions, amongst other conditions, it's mentioned in the Gemara and Bava Metzia, that Yeshua gave Yidden Eretz Yisrael, that in order to be able to produce this fertilizer, this is allowed to be done. You're allowed to keep it in the Rishus Harabim. And our Mishnah says that no, you put it out in Rishus Harabim, you have to have someone to collect it immediately. You can't keep it there. And says the Gemara, no, Philotaim Rabbi Yehuda. Our Mishnah could follow what Rabbi Yehuda said, because even though Rabbi Yehuda said that you're allowed to take it out the Rishus Harabim and keep it there, that was the condition of Yeshua. But Rabbi Yehuda will agree, She'im Hizik, if you left it there and it damaged someone, Chayiv L'Shalom, you'll be obligated to pay for this. So that's what our Mishnah is basically saying the same thing. In our Mishnah it said that if it damaged someone, you're going to be chayiv. So when our Mishnah said, get someone to collect this fertilizer immediately and don't leave it there, our Mishnah wasn't saying that you're not allowed to leave it there. The Mishnah was giving just you good advice. If you're going to damage someone, you're going to be chayiv. So make sure you collect it immediately, so you shouldn't end up in such a situation where you're going to have to pay for any damages. But the Gemara asks on this, but we learned in the Mishnah in Bava Metzia, Rabbi Yehuda b'ner Chanukah. So what this is talking about over there is a person that put a candle outside to burn in front of his house or in front of his building in the Rishus Harabim, and then there's a person coming with a camel with straw on the camel, and the straw on the camel caught on fire and burnt down this person's house. So who's going to be responsible in this case, where the owner of this house put the candle outside in the street? You put your candle outside on the street, you're going to be responsible. But then, Rabbi Yehuda, or the Mishnah there actually says, Rabbi Yehuda says, B'ner Chanukah, when it comes to Ner Chanukah, so then Shu Potter. The one that put it out is going to be Potter, Mipnei Shu Oisa B'Rishos, because during Chanukah, putting out your Chanukah candles in the street, you have permission for this to fulfill the mitzvah. So therefore, the one that put it out is going to be Potter. So my love, says the Gemara, don't you think you see from here, Rishus the Bezdin, that anytime you have Rishus from the Bezdin to do something, if that then causes damage, you're not responsible for this. In that case, the Bala Gomel is going to be responsible for what happened here. So same thing over here, since Yeshua made this condition, you have Rishus to put out this fertilizer in the Rishus Harabim, according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's not only that you have Rishus to put it out, but if it also damages, you're going to be potter. Says the Gemara, loy, that's not Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Rishus the mitzvah. Rabbi Yehuda said it's only regarding Chanukah, where it's a mitzvah. When it's a rishus of mitzvah, there you have a mitzvah to do it, and if it damages, you're going to be potter. In our case, it's a takana that Yeshua instituted, so you have a rishus of the bezin to do it. It's something that's allowed. It's not a mitzvah, but it's allowed, but you still have to take responsibility if it causes any damages, and therefore Rabbi Yehuda's opinion could fit with our Mishnah. But the Gemara brings though, but Vatanya, we learned in Abraisa clearly, it said, all those cases where it says you're allowed to be Mekalkan Shusarabim, over here putting out fertilizer, or other cases, let's say you're allowed to have your gutters flow out into the Shusarabim, or sewage into the Shusarabim. In all those cases, if it's allowed, you're allowed, but if it damages, it's going to be your responsibility. And Rabbi Yehuda Paiter, Rabbi Yehuda clearly said that you're allowed and you're Pater. So it's clear that Rabbi Yehuda holds that this is completely allowed and you have no responsibility for any damages. So therefore, Ela Machvarte, the right pshat over here is Masnisim the Loik Rabbi Yehuda. That what it says in our Mishnah, that you should have someone pick up this manure right away and you're going to be responsible for damages, is not like Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Amar Abaye said, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, Rabbi Shimon. These three Tanoim, Kulus Virulahu, they all are of the opinion that Kol Makom Shenos Lechachamim Rishus, anytime you are given the permission of the Chachamim to put your stuff out in the Rishus Rabim, Vehizik, and it ended up damaging, Potter. You're going to be Potter for this. Rabbi Yehuda Hadam Maran. Rabbi Yehuda is, as we just quoted, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, and Rabbi Shimon Gamliel is Itnan, as we saw on the end of our Mishnah. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Oimer, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says, Af misakenu some lachtoi lefnei shloishim yom. That if you're building, you can have your building materials brought there 30 days in advance, and if it's left there, the Gemara understands he's not only giving you permission to bring it there, but he's coming to say that you're going to be potter if it paid, because right before that the Mishnah said im hizik mishalim. So on that, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel is saying no, you can bring it before, and you won't be obligated to pay if it damages. Now Rabbi Shimon, where do we see Rabbi Shimon says this? That nan, as we learned in the Mishnah, hoya ma midoi ba'aliyah. If this is talking about a person that's living on the second floor and he wants to put an oven there, and you're going to put an oven, it's very hot, and it could cause a damage to the roof of the person living downstairs. Are you allowed to put your oven there? So if you're putting there your oven, so you have to have the floor has to have a plaster that's at least 3 tvachim thick, so it shouldn't cause any damage to the person downstairs from the heat of your oven. Or akira, which is another kind of oven, which is not as hot as the tanner. So this kira, tefach. It's enough if you have the plaster of the floor that's a tefach thick. Now, ve'im hizik, if you did exactly like Chachamim said, you made the floor thick enough, but then still your oven that was hot damaged the person downstairs, mishalem hizik, you'll be responsible to pay for this. But Rab Shimon argues. Rab Shimon says, no, loy omru, kol shiyurim alalu. The only reason Chachamim gave these shiyurim, that you're upstairs and you have your oven there and you have to make a very thick floor, eloshem hizik, patim alashalim, that if you listen to what Chachamim said, and now you have permission to put your oven there, that later, if there's any damage that happens, you're going to be pater. So we see Rab Shimon says, and whenever you put something in a place where Chachamim gave you permission to put it there that way, whatever damage happens as a result later, you're going to be pater. Tana Rabbanon, in connection to this halacha of the building materials that the Mishnah spoke about, we learned in the Braisa, hachatzov, you have a person that carves out the rocks from the mountain. So he's carving this out. Shamasa l'satos. And now after he carves out the rocks, he gives it over to someone else to do the job of chiseling these rocks to make them fit for being used for building. So, and what happens if the satos, while he's chiseling, he drops it and he damages someone? Hasatos chayiv. Now it's in his hands, so he's the one that was mazik, so he's going to be chayiv. Hasatas shemasal l'chamer. Now, after this chisel, the one that chisels out these rocks, gives it over to someone else. He gives it over to the donkey driver to deliver to the construction site, and he's the one that drops it. Hachamer chayiv. The donkey driver is chayiv. Now, hachamer shemasal l'katov. The donkey driver brings it closer to the construction site. And now you have porters that are going to carry it closer up. And now hakatov chayiv. If when the porter has it in his hands, he's the one that drops it and it damages someone, so he's going to be chayiv. Hakatov shemasal lebanoi. Then the porter brings it and gives it over to the builder, and the builder is the one that drops it. Habanoi chayav. The builder is going to be the one that's responsible for this, whatever damages it causes. Habanoi shemasal adrichel. The builder gives it over to the adrichel, which is the ones that actually lay the bricks. There's the general builder here, and then there's the ones that actually do the profession. They have that profession of laying. What do they translate for adrichel? Bricklayer. Yeah, they're the ones that lay the bricks. Then chayiv. If they're the ones that drop it, they're going to be chayiv. Okay, so the point over here is whoever is the one that has it in his hands is going to be chayiv, and no matter how he dropped it, as Rashi brings, the halacha by Adam Amazik is Adam Muad Lo'ilam Oin is Shegig. If whoever has the one that has it in his hands, he's going to be the one that's responsible. Now, v'im hiniach even ala dimos, after this rocks or stones were already placed on the row of the what's being built here. So now after it's already late. And now it fell and it damaged someone. Vihizika and it damaged. Kulam chayavim l'shalim. They're all going to be responsible to pay. And here, there's nobody that damaged with his hands. There's nobody that dropped out of his hands. In such a case, after it fell from this row of bricks, they're all going to be responsible for what happened. Okay, the Gemara will explain this in a second, why they're all responsible. First, the Gemara asks a contradiction, Vatanya, but in a Braisa we learned that in this case, achrein chayiv. Only the last one is going to be responsible for this. The one that laid the bricks, he's the one that's responsible for it when it falls off of this row of bricks. And the kulan peturim, and everyone else is going to be potter for this. So why are we saying that after it's late already that everyone has to take responsibility for this? And says the Gemara like Kashi, it's not a contradiction. Kan b'schiros. If it's a case where you have all these different people in this line here that are doing their particular job, and each one is just being hired to do his job, and then he walks away. He has nothing to do with the other person. In such a case, if the bricks were laid there and the last one is the one that put it here, the ones that came before him have no connection to the fact that the bricks are laying here on this row of bricks. So when it falls, it's totally his responsibility. And kam the kablonos. And over here, when it says they're all going to be responsible, the case over here is they're all working together in this. They're all workers that are hired together to build this house. And each one is doing their stage of the job, but they're not just walking off. They're all working together in collaboration, and they're being paid together to build this house. So over here, when the bricks are laid, nobody personally dropped it out of his hands. If one person dropped it personally out of his hands, he's responsible for what because he dropped it, even if it was with an honest. But if it was already late, and they're all the ones that are taking responsibility for this construction, and they're being paid together for it, now they're all going to have to pay for the damage that happens in this construction site when it falls off of this row of bricks.